Hello everyone, welcome back. So I mounted this primary arms 1 to 10 by 28 second focal plane scope on this Veper 308. Okay, so this is an AK 308. Okay, so this scope over here was on my 223 Wild, and I recently got the first focal plane version of this. Okay, same, almost the same reticle, but a first focal plane version. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with this one over here. And I was thinking of selling it. It's a $450 scope. I was thinking of selling it for $350. And I said, wait a second, let's try it out on this Veper and see how I like it. Now, aside from just testing out the scope on this gun, I was also interested in finding out if an AR-10 with a 16-inch barrel makes any sense. Okay, because I've got this Palmetto AR-10 here with a 20-inch barrel, right? And I've done lots of videos on this. I'll put some links to the playlist in the comments. And it's got this 5 to 25 scope from Primary Arms. And this is great. I've had this out to 1,000 yards. I've got 9 out of 10 shots for 22 inches. So that's like a 2.2 MOA at 1,000 yards. Okay, so this is great, but it's heavy. I mean, this is a freaking heavy gun. With the scope on here, it's like 13 pounds. And the barrel, the 20-inch barrel, adds weight at like the worst place. Okay, yeah, granted it's got a heavy scope, but that extra 4 inches over there, you know, it's adding weight at the far end. Okay, so for that reason, like, I've been kind of like debating whether I should get a Palmetto AR-10 in a 16-inch barrel. Okay, so first of all, I said, okay, you know what, before we actually go and buy this Palmetto 16-inch barrel AR-10, I've got one here with a 6-inch barrel. Let's see how I like this. Okay, so you know, with this in 1 power, yeah, man, we got a 308 here. This is a nice light gun. Okay, this is nice. Put it on my left side here. Yeah. This is a nice gun. Okay, so yes, so weight wise, 16 inches works. Now, granted, the difference in weight of the scope, this scope and mount weighs 1.5 pounds versus 2.5 pounds here. Okay, so the scope is a factor, but the barrel, those 4 inches of steel at the far end on that barrel, makes a difference. Okay, so I've satisfied myself today that weight wise, yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely worth getting this Palmetto AR-10 with the 6-inch barrel. But next thing I'm thinking about is, okay, but what am I giving up in terms of energy downrange? Okay, how effective is this going to be? So I've actually been compiling the data, and I just had to kind of put it together in a manner that was kind of useful, right? So I tested out 2 different ammunition by running them through a chronograph. Okay, so I ran Freedom munitions through the 20-inch AR-10, and then I ran Freedom munitions through the 16-inch Veper 308. Okay, so same ammunition going through a 20-inch barrel here and a 16-inch barrel there. 147 grain bullets. Okay, I'm not going to start rattling off these numbers, you guys. If you're interested, you can read the numbers: feet per second. Right, that's 20 inches at that velocity, 16 inches at that velocity. 147 grain bullets. Muzzle energy. Okay, up here is a calculated number for the 20-inch. Muzzle energy here for the 16-inch. Okay, now this is at 500 yards. Okay, 500 yards. There's my muzzle energy. Now this, again, is a calculated number, 996 foot-pounds versus 903 foot-pounds in a 6-inch barrel. Okay, so I'm giving up about at 500 yards. I'm giving up about 100 foot-pounds of energy, which is basically the difference of a 22 long rifle. Okay, that's what I'm giving up at 500 yards by going to the 16-inch barrel. And I said, okay, well, how about at 1,000 yards? What's happening at 1,000 yards? So same thing. There's a calculated number. My energy on a 20-inch barrel at 1,000 yards, 344 foot-pounds versus the 16-inch barrel, energy of 330 foot-pounds. So we're talking of a difference here of 14 foot-pounds of energy. That's nothing. That's like the difference between like a Glock 17 and the Glock 19. Okay, because 300, if you're shooting target loads out of a Glock 17, right? You're going to get about 350 foot-pounds of energy. Okay, if you shoot that in the Glock 19, you might drop down to 330. We're talking about a tiny difference. That's not going to make a difference on the person being hit. Okay, now out to 500 yards, we can, we still got like upwards of 900 foot-pounds of energy here. So at 500 yards, I would consider this like anti-material, more as an anti-vehicle, like not anti-armored vehicle, but just anti-vehicle out to 500 yards. And then at 1,000 yards, we're down to like 330 to 340 foot-pounds. So now we're in like 9mm pistol territory. So we are like, that's 100% soft, fleshy things. Okay. So I also tried American Sniper. Different ammunition, runs a little bit slower. So same deal. I got the 20-inch barrel here, 16-inch barrel there. They're the two velocities. Okay, with my calculated energy at the muzzle. Okay, and here, right, 20-inch, 16-inch. Okay, and then at 500 yards, we've got 912 versus 774. So it opened up again. Basically we're what, like 125, 130 foot-pounds of energy. That's pretty much the difference out of a long rifle, out of maybe like a longer barrel. Okay, so that's the difference at 500 yards. In a 20-inch barrel versus a 16-inch barrel with this American Sniper 149 grain. There's 149, right now it's 147. Your difference at 500 yards is the energy of a 22 long rifle. Okay, and then at 1,000 yards, at 20-inch barrel, 334 foot-pounds of energy with the 20-inch, right, versus the 16-inch barrel, 306. Okay, so we're talking like a difference of what, like, basically 30 foot-pounds, 334 to 306. I think maybe we just went from like a Glock 19 to a Glock 43. Okay, so that's the difference with the American Sniper at 1,000 yards. If you go from a 20-inch to a 16-inch barrel, and I think that when you think of it in terms, I think this actually makes a lot more sense when you look at these numbers here out at distance. Now one of the things that I think is important to consider is at what point the bullets go subsonic. Okay, because when bullets go subsonic, they very quickly start destabilizing. Maybe not immediately, but they start destabilizing after that. So that's one of the things I also considered here. Okay, so like I said, I've been out to 1,000 yards with this Freedom munition, and I got 2.2 MOA. Okay, at 100 yards I get an inch and a quarter. Okay, so I went from an inch and a quarter to 2.2 MOA. Okay, and here's the thing: the yardage at where this goes subsonic is 850 yards. Okay, so this Freedom munitions, moving at 2782 out of the 20-inch barrel. Okay, goes subsonic at 850 yards, right? And I'm still able to, extend past that to 1,000 yards and get a decent group. Okay, so and that's something I actually did. I posted a video on that. Okay. So now with the 16-inch, okay, at what point does it go subsonic? So the 16-inch with this 147 grain Freedom munitions moving at 2675 feet per second, that goes subsonic at 800 yards. Okay, so in the 16-inch barrel, I'm going to go subsonic with the Freedom munitions 50 yards sooner. Okay, 850 versus 800 yards. Okay, so that's probably something that you kind of want to. Again, it doesn't mean that you're going to be missing past that, because I did get on target at 1,000 yards, but that's you want to be aware of at what point you go subsonic. Okay, now with the American Sniper, I did the same thing. Now that's going a little bit slower with the 20-inch barrel. I went subsonic at 800 yards, okay? And then with the 16-inch barrel, I went subsonic at 700 yards, okay? So that's what I'm losing with when I go from 20-inch to 16-inch. So at the moment, it would make sense for me to, stay with the Freedom munitions, which is going a little bit faster, versus the slower bullets, okay? So, looking at this analysis here, right? I don't think I'm losing that much by going. I don't think I'm losing anything that matters when I go from 16 inches. I'm sorry, when I go from 20 inches to 16 inches, okay? Especially when you look at the energy. Okay, we're talking about a really small. We're talking about like, 15 foot-pounds of energy at 1,000 yards that's being lost, and then with the that's with the Freedom munitions, and with the American Sniper, we're losing about 30 foot-pounds of energy at 1,000 yards. Okay, and again, both of these are like in the 300s. They're all these with both of these ammunitions, we're above 300 foot-pounds of energy. So they're both like at the very least, you're getting the power of a Glock 43 still at 1,000 yards, which is going to work fine on soft, fleshy things. Okay. So yeah. So two things I was interested in testing: mounting the scope up, see how this feels, and yeah, this is a lot easier to swing around and move. Okay. Versus this. This is freaking, especially as I start coming down here. Yeah, all that weight out there. Okay. So yeah, that's big difference in weight. Very little loss, I think, in terms of power, of reach. Right, because we're only losing about 50 yards. We're going to hit that subsonic, no matter what. It seems no matter what ammunition we're using, we're going to go subsonic 50 yards sooner. Okay. Now, let's take a minute and talk about this Veper and my shooting experience with this. And I've had this. Here's the thing: I've had this now for at least 8 years. I probably have less than 200 rounds on it, and a lot of those rounds are me training other people actually shooting it. Okay, so I've It's not a gun I have shot too much. I usually just zero it in, fire a couple of rounds. Okay, let's do some distance shooting. And the scope I had on this was a Bushnell with just a plain duplex. When I was shooting this, when I was first shooting this some 8 years ago, I mean the groups seemed like they were like 4 inches wide. Okay, and then what I did is I was shooting Tula, right? And after I got this Palmetto AR-10, I got some better ammunition, and I was able to get down to about 2.5 MOA. Where I was kind of hitting it consistently, somewhat consistent, not completely consistent, somewhat consistent. Okay. So let's take a look at some shooting that I did today, because I put that scope on there and I zeroed it in. Okay, and they're not the most consistent groups, and we'll talk about why. Okay, so I mean, if you look at these the 3 boxes here where I was trying to get a zero, we got like 3.5 inches. Okay, then I got 1, 2, 3 shots here, which are at like 1.5 inches, 3 shots, and then I've got 1, 2, 3 there that are at 2 inches. Okay, so I'm averaging. I'm getting in there about 2 inches. Well, let's say this. I shot this again. This time I said, okay, instead of doing 3 shots groups, because I seem to have found where my zero was. I zeroed it for 50 yards and I took it out to 100. So I'm a little high at 100. And then this time I did this is a 6-shot group. Okay, so 6 shots here. Total group is at 4 inches. Okay, now this one over here, I don't know why they freaked that one out there. That might have been the ammunition. But if we look at a lot of time, in most of the videos that I do groups, I usually look at the best 4 out of 5. So 4 out of 5 were about 3 inches. Okay, so that's not terrible. But then if you look over here, I got like this I got 3 shots here that are like 1 inch. So now I've always had difficulty shooting this rifle. Okay. So I've always had some difficulty shooting this rifle. So number one, first of all, the trigger on this it's not. There's a lot of creep on it. You know, let's put it this way: if you're used to shooting like Schmidt triggers, right, the two-stage Schmidt triggers, you know, there's like going to this. It's like there's there's a big. You have to adapt to it. You have to get used to shooting this type of a trigger. Okay, so yeah, most of my guns have nice triggers. So going to this, that's the first hurdle I gotta get over. Okay, the trigger doesn't work the way I'm used to triggers working. Okay? Next issue, and this is probably the bigger issue, is the way this scope is mounted, right, on this side rail over here. It is freaking high. Okay, so basically I have to get my jaw on the gun. Okay, so when this is in 1 power, not a problem. I can get up, get my jaw on the gun, and I can get on target, even lefty. Okay, not a problem in 1 power, because now there's a 34 millimeter tube. Because again, with 34 millimeters, the eye box is a little bit more forgiving. The problem becomes when I go up to like 10 power. Okay, when I'm up on 10 power, you know, finding that eye box, getting the eye in the right position is really hard. And the reason is because I'm not putting my face where I normally put my face, right? You know, this spot over here, I'm putting like my jaw on the gun. So I really don't have a good anchoring point. So what I ended up doing is I actually took this sweater over here and had it over the gun to try and get my face up a little bit higher, okay? So I do plan to take this gun out to like 1,000-yard range. And what I'm going to probably do is like put a sock over the top here and just kind of like zip tie it down. I don't want to make any permanent changes to this gun. I'm going to put a sock on here, zip tie it down, and that'll raise the comb of the stock up a little bit so I can get in a better position, okay? Now, let's talk about the accuracy. So here's the thing, we saw some of these groups are anywhere from like 1 inch all the way out to 4 inches. Issues that I'm having, yeah, the trigger is very different. My position on the stock is the position of my face on the stock is very different. With this type of a stock, I'm not able to get a good, like a typical sniper hold where I can get underneath it. Okay, it just doesn't work. You know, which I can't squeeze the bag. Normally, the way you do it is like you get like 2 fingers on the bag, 2 fingers on the stock, right? 2 fingers on the bag, 2 fingers on the stock. And you can drive the gun from the back. With this type of a stock, it just doesn't work. What I ended up doing is putting my hand in front of the magazine and pulling that back. That was the only way I could. That's the only way I can really get this to work. Okay, so that's and when the gun would recoil, again, because I didn't have good control of the bag, I mean the back would move a little bit. Okay, so that's also another consistency problem. Okay. Now, mechanically with the gun, let's take a look at the way on the typical AR, right? Right, the barrel is attached. The barrel is connected to the upper receiver, right? And then your mount goes directly on the upper receiver. Okay, so on the AK, what we got going on here is, okay, so you got your receiver here, right? And then there's a piece that basically gets riveted onto the receiver, okay? And then the mount attaches to that, and then the scope of the mount goes onto that. So there's 2 extra pieces between your scope and your gun, okay? You got the piece that attaches to the receiver, and we got the mount attaches too. So you got the mount, and then you got the piece that attaches to the receiver. So there's 2 extra pieces on there. And the way this sits, right? Because with this, I can take this, and I can push down on this. It's not going to move. In fact, a lot of times the way I'll carry this gun, I'll just grab it from here, man. it doesn't move. Okay, this is a place where a lot of times if I'm moving the gun around, I'll just pick up the gun and I'll carry it from here, and it's fine. There's no, you know, it doesn't lose 0. Okay, with this, if I just take my finger and I push down on this, okay, there's a little bit of flex. Okay, now you might say, yeah, like if I, it also will come in like that if I push in. Now you might say a lot of people say get a better mount, but I don't know if it's the mount. I think that the place of movement might actually be where the piece that rivets directly to the receiver. Okay, now on top of that, an AK-47, when you shoot it, the receiver flexes, right? This piece of metal here, if you watch an AK-47 shoot in slow motion, there's a lot of flex going on, okay? So so when I'm looking at these groups and it's like, okay, why are these groups anywhere from like, 1 inch all the way out to 4 inches? There's a lot of pieces in there that are like, there's a lot of variables, and I don't know which is the variable that is the problem. Okay, is it me? There's a good chance it might be me because I'm not used to the trigger. I'm not used to my jaw on the gun. Okay, so it could be a me problem. Okay, and it could be, it could be a problem also the way I'm holding the gun, because I can't take the sniper hold. I gotta hold it from here. So there's another me problem, right? There's a stability problem there. And then on top of that, now we got 2 extra pieces between the scope and the receiver. That could also be the problem. And like I said, when I push on this, I can see that, yeah, it moves. And I don't know, I mean, I don't think it's this piece of metal here that's actually bending, because I'm not putting that much pressure on it to move this piece of metal over here. So I think that the part that's moving, I think it's the receiver itself that's flexing a little bit, because the receiver does flex. I mean, that's what an AK-47 receiver does when it shoots. It flexes. So as I'm going now, it may not be an issue as long as you're not pushing on this. However, I know for certain if I take this and I drop this thing is gonna, it's gonna lose 100%, just because the mount and it's gonna move a little bit. Okay, not because of the scope, but because of the way the scope is attached to it. And on top of that, one of the things worth noting, okay, the scope is slightly offset, right? Because the way this thing sits, right, it's off to the side and then it curves over the top. Well, AK-47's like, the person that built this mount didn't know if it was going to go on an AK-47 or an AK-308, or if it was going to go on an AK-74, or if it was going to go on a Romanian one, a Bulgarian one, a Russian one. This one's actually made in Russia. It's got Russian writing on it. So AKs are not, it's a platform, but the parts are usually not interchangeable, okay, from one AK to the other. In fact, one of the things, like with an AR, you could just take the bolt out and just throw another bolt in there. With an AK, if you change the bolt, the barrel has to be headspace. You have to, a gunsmith has to move the barrel back and forth to get the proper head spacing. So there's lots of variables here. Now one of the interesting things, like if I wanted, the way the sling is attached, I got it here and I got it here. That's very awkward for this to be hanging on my back that way. I would like it the way my AR sling is, where on the side here and on the stock back here. To update, to change the furniture on this, if I can, even if the ones I saw fit it, okay, because again, we're talking like $350. At that point, I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna get an AR-10, okay, get an AR-10 with the 6-inch barrel rather than start messing with this, okay. So at this point, this is more of like a collector's item, okay. So it was like $600 when I got it, maybe $650 back in the Obama years. I actually should have got 2. I should have got one in, should have got the 308. I should have got in 7.62 by 5.4R. So I should have got 2 of these back when these things were like $600. But yeah, I'm not gonna fuss with trying to upgrade this, because I think there's just too many pieces that would need to be upgraded. And even if you upgrade the pieces, I don't know if they're actually gonna fix the problem, because we don't know if it's a hardware problem or if it's a me problem, just getting used to the gun. But the gun has been very useful, right, for helping me, run bullets through the chronograph, figuring out my velocities, seeing how much velocity I'm actually losing in a 16-inch barrel versus a 308 barrel, and what that's going to mean downrange at 500 yards and 1,000 yards. Now, one of the things to be aware of when you're shooting 308s, because 308 ammunition, usually when they test it, they're testing it like in a 24-inch barrel or something, or 26-inch barrel, does burn at different rates. Okay, so if you get an ammunition that burns really slow, what's going to happen is the bullet's going to leave the barrel and before the gunpowder has a chance to fully burn. Okay, so if you got a 308 or even any gun that has a short barrel, you want to run the ammunition through a chronograph, and you want ammunition that has what you want to do is run it at a like I did, like in a 20-inch barrel, and run it in a 16-inch barrel. Okay, and compare different ammunitions, because with some ammunitions between these two barrels over here, I'm losing, like, let's say 150 feet per second, but with other ammunitions, the gap might be bigger. It might be like 200 feet per second or 250 feet per second. Okay, so you want to check with the run different ammunitions through a chronograph, and you want to get one where you get the least amount of velocity drop. Okay, because that can happen. You can have one brand might be using a slower burning gunpowder, in which case it's going to make more of a difference. The ammunition is going to be running a lot slower through the shorter barrel. Okay, so that's just one of the things to be aware of, and one of the things I've been keeping an eye on over here. So I hope the video was interesting to you guys. Drop some comments below. And again, I'm going to include a playlist for this Palmetto AR-10, and also for the scope, the primary arm scopes that you see over here. You can check out that playlist. Okay, so talk to y'all soon.